This episode of the Beer Bound Podcast is brought to you by Rolling Hops Beer Tours.
Hey everybody, Garrett here from Rolling Hops, as always joined with my partner,
Andy.
We're here to tell you guys about our virtual craft beer tour offering. With what's going on in the world, unfortunately, we haven't been able to run our historical craft walking beer tour, so we've pivoted to taking the virtual experience of craft beer directly to you guys. Wonderful for team building events, corporate events, even just a night out or in, for that matter, with your friends and family. And we're doing this online.
Have any questions about the beer tours or want us to tailor make an event for you? Just shoot us an email or send us a message on any form of social media. Rolling Hops, you can find us everywhere.
RollingHopsBeerTours.com is where you can get a hold of us, and we'll see you guys soon.
Cheers. Welcome, everyone, to an episode of the Beer Bound Podcast. We're excited to be joined by Josh Hayter, the president of Spearhead Brewing Company in Kingston, Ontario. Spearhead is a decade in age, going back all the way to its inception in 2011. However, it wasn't until 2018 that the brewery itself was built. Spearhead offers a wide selection of unique and experimental styles and even offers tours to guests interested in learning about the brewing process. We're excited to learn more about this Kingston-based brewery. So without further ado, we welcome Josh to the Beer Bound Podcast. Hello, Josh.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. So, Josh, maybe you can start us off with a little bit about yourself, your experience with brewing, beer, as well as Spearhead, the brewery. The microphone is yours. Yeah.
Fair enough. So, I kind of give you a little bit of background on where I come from. I'm not one of the original founders. The original founders of Spearhead have moved on to do other things in their careers. They started out as lawyers and they went back to being lawyers. But, even going back further than that, there was a good point in time where I was not a big fan of beer. It was, I'd only ever really experienced the macro beers. I had the Coors Light and the Molson Canadians of the world, and it just wasn't for me. So I always drank good spirits. I drank good wine. And it was, I think, in 2007, my former mother-in-law got me a book. It's called Notes on a Beer Mat. And this book is fantastic. If you haven't read it, you got to find it. You can get it on Amazon. It's Nick Pashley's, he was the book buyer for the University of Toronto, but he's also just a hell of a nice guy. And he's just wrote about his experiences drinking good beer all over the world. Because that's what he did. He drank good beer. He traveled. He even invented a couple of very interesting games. But he's just a great dude, and he really explained that good beer is supposed to have flavor, and how the big breweries kind of took that away from beer. And after reading that, it sounds kind of corny to say a book changed my life, but it really did. I read that book and I went down to a couple of the beer bars in Toronto to really start understanding beer. The Say What down at the base of the city became a staple in where I was going out. And then, of course, the Only Cafe as well. Those are the two kind of spots that I really kind of cut my teeth on some beer education. I went into those places and learned a lot about beer, tried a lot of different beers. And at the time, I was actually running a web development company in Toronto. And we created some blog software. And to test it out, I was like, I'll do a little bit of blogging. And I called it beersnob.ca. And it kind of snowballed on me. I was going to shut it down when we were done the testing. And I had 800 readers. And at the time, I thought that was a huge amount of people. So I brought a buddy of mine on and we wrote it together for years. We actually turned it into a small events company as well, where we called it the Drink and Learn. So it's like a lunch and learn, but we bring in a beer speaker and a business speaker. and they would give presentations during this event, and it would all be from whatever brewery the beer speaker was from. We'd have their beer for the whole night, and that was a lot of fun. At the same time, my palate got better over time, and so did my writing skills. So I was writing for Muskoka Life and some Metroland Media Group publications. And that's kind of actually how I met the folks at Spearhead. Was first I built their website, and they also came out to do one of my drink and learns. I came on as an investor in 2014 or 2013, somewhere in there. And then 2015, I took out one of the founders and took his spot. 2016, we were really, very vigorously looking for a space. I went into literally every vacant building in the GTA and then expanded it out and out and out. We actually looked at a spot even up on Lake Huron. That's how far out we were looking. Wow. And I was actually sitting in the office of Richard Ward, who's my business partner now at Spearhead. He was an original investor in Spearhead like myself. And we're sitting there in his office trying to figure out, like, where the hell are we going to put this brewery? Because we had to try to find a space that was the right size. That was the biggest problem in Toronto, is if we wanted 5,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet, we could have had it. But nothing else in the GTA was really kind of fitting. And what we wanted was kind of 14 to 16,000 square feet to start out. And we're sitting in his office talking about this. He gets a phone call. He's like, "I'm really sorry. I got to step out. This is my tenant in my other building." And he comes back in and he's like, "You're not going to believe this isn't a setup, but my tenant just said they're out at the end of their lease. It ends up in June. Why don't we have a look?" So we walked over, we looked into the building, and that's where we are today. Originally our building was building brakes for trains. It was the old Kenora brake, New York air brake. They were doing brakes for trains for 30 years. And when they left the factory, we took it over, and now we're making beer. So we started the build in 2017 and did our first commercial brew in February 2018.
Cool. That's a little a bit of fate, I guess.
Yeah,
right into your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. In terms of, there's so much there, but I'm curious about what you said with square footage. Like you said, you were looking for 14 to 16,000 square feet. Is that,
yes,
in terms of a craft brewery? Like if you look at just the whole array of different sizes, big and small, do you think that's sort of the average in terms of craft breweries, or is that a bit on the big side, a bit on the small side?
It's all over the place. Yeah. It really is. Like there are some really good craft breweries that are in 500 square feet. There are some really good craft breweries that are in 100,000 square feet. Really what it came down to for us was we looked at, okay, here's the capacity that we have right now. Here's the amount of beer we're making. And because we had been a contract brewer for so long, and for anybody who doesn't know, contract brewers are essentially someone who doesn't have their own brewery yet, so they're brewing in somebody else's brewery. So it's like a commercial caterer renting out a commercial kitchen. And so we had done that for quite some time. So we wanted to be able to offer those services because we'd found some really great breweries to work with, and we'd found some terrible breweries to work with. And what we wanted to do was make it a good experience for anybody coming in and try to help them get to the point where they could open their own space, be almost like an incubator. So we still, to this day, keep some contract brewing. So we wanted to have enough space to have the fermenters to be able to do that. And the other thing that I've been told by so many of my colleagues in this industry is if you get a building that is the size you need for the volume you're brewing, you're going to grow out of it before you're done building. So get something bigger. So what we did was we found a spot that's 16,000 square feet. It handles everything we need today. We can actually double our capacity within that footprint, but there's another 15,000 square feet off the back of the building we can expand to in the future. So it really gives us a lot of room to grow over time without having to freak out and actually physically move the brewery.
Mm-hmm. But how did you actually come to that number? Why was 14 to 16? Why was that the sweet spot for you
That was based on the volume that we were doing at the time. At the time, we were doing about 3,000 hectoliters. So we thought, okay, let's double that, and we need to have at least enough space to handle that.
Mm-hmm. And you said you were contract brewing. Did you say where you were contract brewing? That was in Toronto.
We contract brewed out of several different locations.
Yeah.
In some of the GTA, some outside of it.
Some of the GTAs. Okay. So you kind of had, your presence was in Toronto, and then it's sort of when the sweet spot came available, it happened to be in Kingston. Yeah. So was that a big adjustment for you guys? Did you think, oh, maybe we did kind of want to stay in the greater Toronto area, or was that sort of a no-brainer?
Well, initially we wanted to stay in the Toronto area, but we really fell in love with Kingston pretty quickly. It's a great city to work with as far as the actual working with the city departments and just getting things done. But the people just embraced us with open arms. It's a good brewing community in the area. And it was one of those situations where, there were a few other breweries in town and they welcomed us, as peers, as opposed to, invaders. And, we were able to really mesh with the community. It's got that small town vibe. I'm originally from Halifax, and it's got the same kind of feel to it because you got the big water there in the Citadel, and it's just it feels right, and it felt right when we got here. We still have a great presence in Toronto. Our Toronto rep and our Toronto licensees and retail locations are doing great for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got a lot of fans and a lot of friends in Toronto, and I try to get down there as often as I can as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's true. Garrett and I actually took a trip to Halifax. Halifax is kind of similar to Kingston. They're kind of the same city.
Yeah, I mean, Halifax is it's a little rougher. You can any given Friday night, you can go out for a black eye and a beer.
And a donair.
Yes. You go to the lower deck, you get your black eye and a beer, and you get your donair on your way home. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a bit bigger too than Kingston. Kingston's smaller.
Yeah, a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Kingston's about 120,000.
That's right. Got all the rough people in Kingston are behind bars.
There's a few of them there.
Yeah, for sure. So would you say that now you're kind of spread out a bit? I know that you can find Spearhead. Yeah, you're right. In Toronto, in LCBO's beer stores, as well as bars. Would you say that is your biggest push as a business? Is it centralized in Kingston, would you say now that your brick and mortar is there, or you really do see yourself as a Southern Ontarian
I would say that we're really centralized in Ontario, and that we're branching out slowly into other areas. So what I mean by that is, we're in LCBOs and beer stores and LCBO convenience outlets and bars from the Quebec border all the way to Thunder Bay. And we're in Windsor, we're in St. Catharines, we're in Stratford, we're in Niagara Falls, Toronto, and, we're right across Ontario. We've got a pretty good presence in Ottawa as well. And, we've just got amazing people that like our beer right across the province. And we send on a reasonably regular basis some beer out to New Brunswick. And also out to Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Cool. And we're just starting now to send some beer across the border into Ohio as well.
Awesome. That's a pretty good reach.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're working hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a distribution network to be built for sure. Actually, well, since you went from being a contract brewery and let's say with mainstay in the GTA, and then you moved to Kingston, were there any big distribution hurdles that you experienced? And if so, maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Well, when we were in Toronto, we had a van and we do all our own deliveries. And when we moved out here, we realized that that's just not possible, because we'd have to have a warehouse somewhere in Toronto, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having a warehouse in Kingston.
Right.
So basically Kingston to Ottawa area, sort of anywhere from Port Hope to the Quebec border and up to Ottawa, that whole area, we do our own deliveries through our own van out of the brewery. And then we had to find a logistic partner, and we went through a few of them. But Cold House we use now, and they've been great. They handle GTA and out to all the rest of Ontario. And even even in Ottawa, for example, we use them for our grocery deliveries, because when you send a truck into grocery, it can be, you're in and out in 2 minutes if you're dropping off a couple of cases. But if you get there 5 minutes after the McCain truck shows up, you're sitting there for 2 hours waiting, because there's an awful lot of French fries being unloaded. So we use Cold House. They've been amazing logistic partners for us. And that's really helped quite a bit.
So I feel like that's expanded so much in the last year, almost 2 years now, just obviously because of the pandemic, it's great though. I feel like building that infrastructure for beer distribution logistics is definitely going to play a big part in sort of how craft beer is shaped going forward. So it's nice to see that it's helping the industry for sure.
Yeah, Josh, we've spoken with quite a few brewery owners and brewery managers who have kind of gone the similar route that you have gone, in terms of starting first having an established contract brewery and then making your way into having a brick and mortar. Can you tell us a little bit about just how those two enterprises are different? You mentioned a little bit in terms of logistics, obviously. Do you prefer one or the other? Is one can you tell us a little bit of the nuance between being a contract brewery? Yeah.
Like having your own home is definitely better. I've been on both sides of this coin. Having your own space is better. And I mean, first off, it's just, you have somewhere to put stuff, right? Like we were doing cold storage at several different places and just trying to manage where the beer is, how we get to it, the access to it, to make deliveries. And it gets very difficult when you're a contract brewer. At the beginning, when you're a contract brewer, it's a great way to get into the market, because you can test your recipes and test your ideas without laying out $4 million in brewing equipment. But you grow to a certain point where it's like, okay, I've got to make this a bigger business. I need to make this into something that I can make myself, because I'm not going to make the margins when I'm doing contract brewing. So, it's a good foot in the door. You can establish a brand, you can start building. Logistics was a nightmare, just because we would have to rent from different facilities. And most of the facilities were great. They could carry the beer and they'd have the kegs and the cans and everything set up. But where do you put all your other stuff? Like your event kits, your tents for doing, like Toronto Festival of Beer, all those sorts of things. Like we all had them in our garage and in our basements, and it's just you're running around and it's crazy. So having your own space is really a godsend for that. And the system's kind of stacked against the contract brewers, to be honest. They have a lot of trouble with, we're members of the Ontario Craft Brewers Association, and we love being members there. It's great. There's amazing benefits to it, but contract brewers can't get a full membership, and they don't get all of the benefits from it. On top of that, they're not allowed to sell their beer online. We are. So that hurt a lot of them through the pandemic.
Oh.
If you don't have your own space, you can't. One of the things a lot of people don't know is contract brewers can't go in the beer store unless their host brewery that makes their beer is willing to do all their books with the beer store, because the beer store doesn't want to deal with all of these different locations. So it's hard for them to really get their footprint. The LCBO is really their only outlet. Having your own bricks and mortar just opens up a lot of doors. We're allowed to do online sales. We're allowed to be at the beer store. it just gives us more options to sell our beer and get it out to people who want it.
That's interesting. I didn't know that as a contract brewer, you couldn't do a few of those things. That's it's definitely an eye opener. Yeah, it doesn't bode well for them if they were looking to take advantage of those, especially over the last 2 years. I like
Yeah,
that they
I know
mentioned
the AGCO was playing whack-a-mole with them, trying to get them to stop for the online sales during the pandemic. I mean, and I can't blame them. They're just trying to save their businesses.
Yeah. Do you think that's fair? Like, Josh, like in terms of, do you think these contract brewers should have more skin in the game if they want to play in the big leagues, or do you think these restrictions aren't justified?
I don't think it's all that fair, to be honest. I would much rather see a more robust market than a smaller market. A lot of people say the Ontario market, oh, it's so saturated, it's so saturated. We're nowhere near as saturated as the US market is. And they might have 3 breweries that close down every week in the US, but there's 5 that open. There's a lot of room to grow, and there's a lot of really small breweries that are just going to service their neighborhood, and good on them. And they're going to do great. And for me, it's all boats rise with the tide. Everybody in this craft brewing industry is really up against the big guys.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone's fighting macro, as it were. I wanted to touch on what you mentioned about the Ontario Craft Brewers Association, like the membership there. And I've read a little bit about them, but you said there's some perks to having a membership with them. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that, because I think we've mentioned Ontario Craft Brewers Association a few times, but we haven't really got into the nitty gritty of it as a brewer.
So, I mean, the biggest thing for me is the OCB has always got our back. If there is a situation with the AGCO or the LCBO or any of the governing bodies, and we have a question or a concern, they will take it up and they will help us get through whatever it is that we're going through. And if it's a situation where like we want to ask some sensitive questions about like, are we doing this right so we don't get in trouble, they'll go and be the bad guy and ask the questions without our name getting involved. And they'll do that for any brewery that's a member. Like they're very good at protecting their members, but also finding the information to make sure we're doing things the right way. And that's, I find that's really important.
Yeah, of course.
They also advocate for us to be able to sell our beer in more locations in different ways. They're very good at, like, I know the Ford government talks about cutting red tape. The OCB actually is working very hard towards getting them to do that and making it easier for us to bring our product to market.
It's good to know. Like the craft breweries sort of have a man in their corner with the OCBA.
Yeah, they do.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Josh, can you tell us a little bit about your beer as well as your I believe you have 2 brewers, and
yes.
I think Thomas he's the head brewer, and I believe, and he seems like an interesting man from the Czech Republic. Maybe you can tell us.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So Tom he's definitely an interesting guy. I've actually got pictures of him in like black and white from when he was 18, because color had not been invented by this point. And he's picking hops off the vines in the Czech Republic. So Tom is a true brewmaster. He has earned that title. He's been brewing for over 40 years. He has a degree in food science, a degree in microbiology. Like he's really put in all of the work to have that title of brewmaster. You will find that there are breweries around there that throw that title around to whoever happens to be the guy who's the most experienced in the room. That's not a title that should be taken lightly. He really is a master brewer. He did 30 years at Labatt. And in his time at Labatt, he worked his way up from being a brewer to being a plant manager in several plants, to being their head of international QC when he retired. He actually retired from there not too long after AB InBev took over. And it was he just didn't like the corporate culture the way it was changing. A lot of people will say a lot of different things about the different products that Labatt makes. But one thing that, was always a huge staple there is they treated their employees super well. It was one of those places they just really took care of their people. They took care of their own, and Tom just didn't feel the same vibe. He felt like things were changing a bit, and he took a package, golfed for 2 years, and then we, just when he thought he was out, we brought him back in. There's a couple of breweries, you may know that he worked at, like under the Labatt moniker. I mean, he did. He worked in London and in Saskatchewan and Alberta and Saskatoon, and for just brewing the regular Labatt products. But he little brewery, tiny little thing when he took it over. That he was the plant manager and built into a big brewery. You may have heard of his Cocaine out in BC.
Yeah.
Love Cerveza in Cuba. Yeah, it's a good Pilsner. Then you've got Cristal Cerveza in Cuba. He went in and kind of cleaned things up and got the ship going in the right direction when Labatt bought Rolling Rock. It's a couple little brands that he had quite a hand in. And sometime when we've got more time, we'll tell you the story about when he inadvertently caused a strike at the Keith's plant in the 70s in Nova Scotia.
More time. I want to know about that now.
Yeah, I
know. Well, I'll let him tell you that story.
Yeah,
sometime,
I know.
Because
that sounds good. Yeah,
he tells that story a lot better than I do. He's also he's an incredible foodie. He makes pickles, he makes hot sauce, he makes all sorts of amazing dishes. I love it when he's around because he always brings and makes food. His Czech goulash, I have yet to find anything that compares to it. That being said, when we brought Tom in, it was in 2011. He was in his 60s. So some time's gone by, and we always knew we'd need a succession plan. So we've been growing our own replacement ever since we started. Tom's son, Jacob, is our head brewer. And he started out in 2011 as a brew hand. And Jacob has been, he's been brewing since he could walk. I often tease him that, because his sister has been brewing since she could walk too, but she's a physical therapist out in Sarnia. But I often tease him, if you don't work out, we're bringing your sister in.
Gotta have a backup plan.
She can brew as well. But yeah, Jacob is an incredible young brewer. I think of him as young, but I mean, he's in his 30s now. But a kid was 20 when he started, and he's learned everything from his dad, but also he's had a formal education as well. When it was time for him to really learn, we sent him to brew labs in Sunderland, England, to really learn the craft there. So he's quite accomplished in his own right as well, and he really runs the day-to-day operations in the brewery. Tom's still the brains behind a lot of our recipes and a lot of things that we do in our QC, but he's taking a bit of a backseat these days to Jacob, and Jacob's really kind of coming into his own and taking things over.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. Just don't have to look elsewhere and just from within. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, now Jacob's going to have a kid, so we can keep it rolling.
Yeah. All part of the succession plan.
A new crop.
Yes, exactly.
That's
Although
really cool.
My daughters keep saying they want nothing to do with it, but as soon as they're old enough, they're going to be folding boxes in the back of the brewery.
That's it.
Everyone's got to pitch in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was it like getting Tom and Jacob? Is that did you have a connection with them prior? Were they in Kingston? How did that come about?
Now, you'll have to forgive me. I don't remember the name of the newspaper, but it was a small newspaper out of London, Ontario, that did a story about Tom when he retired, because he retired back to London. And we read the article and went with sort of the prototype of our Hawaiian style pale ale and pitched him on it. and said, like, come work with us. We're going to do some cool stuff. We want to do very traditional sort of hand brewing with non-traditional ingredients and kind of push the envelope and be that beer without boundaries. And we want to be the guys, and we still are, that, we wake up every single morning thinking there's a perfect beverage out there for everybody. We're going to find out what it is and we're going to make it. And that's just kind of the attitude that we want to have. And Tom bought into that right away. And, we've been part of that ever since.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the production, the styles, the creativity, the choices of which beer styles you will experiment with or try, like, who actually mans the ship for that? Is that sort of a joint commission, or
it's a joint venture for sure? I mean, it's sales has to be involved, marketing has to be involved, because we, no matter what we make, we have to sell it to people, and production has to be involved. And we're such a close-knit family that we're able to really bounce ideas off each other. And, like, you'll get a couple of beers and Tom, and he'll be like, okay, to be very honest, that's a very bad idea. And we'll go back and forth. And
that's pretty honest.
Well, it is. And, but it allows us to come up with a lot of fun things to do. Mm-hmm. And there's sometimes where, like, I'll walk downstairs, I'll look Jacob in the eyes. I'm like, how you love it when I ruin your life? And I'll pitch him an idea. And he's like, actually, that one's not too bad. Let's do that. So there's a lot of that kind of going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I feel like you need that for proper collaboration and brainstorming, right? You gotta, even if a couple of ideas might piss you off every so often, there's one that sticks and it works, and you guys work through that.
Yeah,
sort of similar to what Andy and I do from time to time. Yeah. Definitely annoy each other, but some good comes out of it.
Sometimes.
Excellent.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about your staple beers that you create, as well as some seasonal, some experiments? Just tell us about the beers and the particular styles you guys tend to lean towards.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our flagship and sort of our original beer is the Hawaiian style pale ale. It's a hoppy, it's really hop forward West Coast style pale ale. If we were making this now for the first time, I'd probably call it an IPA, just the way the market's changed in the last 10 years. It's actually, you can see the 10-year can behind me there on the Zoom background, but it's a hoppy West Coast pale ale. We cut it with a little bit of pineapple juice. And what that does is it just takes the top off the hops, like the extra bitterness off it. So you still get the real hop flavors coming through without all of the bitterness. And it was, at the time that we put it out, nobody would have thought to put pineapple in a beer. I mean, now people will put anything in a beer. And, we loved the fact that we were kind of on the forefront of that. I remember about 2 years ago, I don't know if you guys have heard of the SO Beer Boys, but they're the Southern Ontario Beer Boys. It's a group of guys that drink a lot of beer, write about a lot of beer. They're sort of 5 or 6 people that collaborate to one Twitter account. And they called us out on the Hawaiian and said, like, hey, this is not a pineapple. Like, this is not a pineapple beer. And, that it caught my attention pretty quick. Marketing came back to me with that. And I was like, all right, grab the camera, grab me a beer, let's go. And I sat down and actually explained. I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. This is not a pineapple beer. This is not a juice beer. This is a beer that happens to have some pineapple in it. So you're not even going to get a big pineapple hit off it. You're just going to get some of that kind of essence of the pineapple off it, because we don't put a lot in. It's not a juice beer. It's not a radler. We do make radlers, and they've got a whole lot more juice in them. But Hawaiian's not. So that's been our staple for the last 10 years. Very close to it in sales is actually our lighter lager. So we have lighter lager branded in 2 different ways. We've got our lighter lager and our decoy lager. It's the same beer, cans. We did the second can because we're supporting Ducks Unlimited with that can. So we're actually giving back to water conservation with it.
Amazing.
It's
Awesome.
it's a great project. It's a camo can with ducks on it. So it helps $1 from every 6-pack on that goes back to support Ducks Unlimited. But what we really wanted to do was have a well-rounded lineup so that we've got something for everybody. So we've got our light lager, which is kind of it's a gateway beer for those who are interested in craft beer, but haven't really, taken the plunge yet. It's like back in the day when Mill Street used to be a craft brewery. People would go in and be like, okay, I want a Coors Light. They're like, I don't know, try this. This is better. So that's what lighter lager was designed to do, was be a nice light lager with real flavor to it. That's worked out really quite well for us. We've got our Queen of Wheat, which is one of the unique things about that is we've got a local Kingston activist and drag queen, Rowena Way, is on the can. That beer has actually got a really fun story. If we got an extra couple minutes here on that one,
we do.
Yeah, for sure.
February 2020. This is kind of before the COVID ended our events and everything going on. We threw an anti-Valentine's Day party. We called it Love's a Drag, and it was a drag show on Valentine's Day. And I actually don't make it out to a lot of the Spearhead events because I'm there at 6 a.m. and I'm working all day. I don't, I want to see my kids sometimes, so I don't often go to the events. But I went to this one, and sitting in the audience, it was amazing. There was the whole front row was filled with kind of teens and young adults who their parents had brought them out to this show to show them that this is okay. You can be who you are, because they were all having different difficulties in their lives, and just saying it's okay. You can be who you are. Look at these great people, doing this great performance. And the interaction between the performers and the young folks sitting in the front row, just it struck me. And I was like, we got to do something to help here. So we put Rowena Way on the cans, and we're working with the Canadian Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity. And part of the proceeds go back to that organization to help with education and help everybody feel okay being who they are. Because that really struck to our core of, we're Beer Without Boundaries is basically saying be who you are, do whatever you want to do. And, that really kind of struck a chord with us.
Really
so
cool.
we've got the light lager that gives us the wheat beer. And then of course, we start getting into the IPAs. We've got our Hawaiian style. And then we've got the Big Kahuna, which is Hawaiian's big brother. It's our Imperial. It's a 10%. This thing is a hug in a can. It is amazing. I love 2 of them, more of them, I don't remember. But it is it's an amazing beer. And then we made our New England IPA, which, I'm a Halifax boy. I also lived in, a lot of people don't know, I lived in Maine for 16 years when I was a kid. So I am very well versed in New England IPAs. I really enjoy those. And we just released last month our Amber. So we've got an Amber beer now. It's called the Amber of the North. And we named it after, there's actually a big statue in Northern England, right near where Jacob went to school, called the Angel of the North. And it's this huge steel sculpture. So we put that on the can. And it was because that's where Jacob actually started coming up with the ideas for the recipe for this, back when he was in school.
Oh, cool.
So we feel we've got a pretty well-rounded lineup. The only things we don't have for our sort of everyday core would be a stout porter, that area where we always do a stout or a porter every year. We just don't have one year round.
Right.
So, we don't do that all the time. Just being completely frank, they don't sell that well in the summer and the spring. And the other style that we don't have, and we probably never will, is a sour. Right. It's not it's just not our thing. First, and foremost, I'm worried about cross-contamination within the brewery. And on top of that, it's not our brewer's forte, and we want to brew what we're good at. We don't want to try to make a sour and screw it up. There's lots of people out there that make amazing sours. Drink theirs. I do. I'm not a huge sour fan, but there are some places where I've gotten some great ones, and I really quite enjoy them. Actually, one of them is a tiny brewery in the Kingston area called Fine Balance, and they make some really nice sours. Also, in Kingston, you've got Daft Brewery that's putting out some really good sours. There's Small Pony. They're all over the place, but it's just not our gig, so we don't do those.
Yeah, fair enough. Do what you know, do what you're good at. Absolutely. I did want to ask you about G'day, because I just was perusing your website, and I guess it's a Canadian-Australian collaboration. So two opposite ends of the globe. How'd that come to be?
So we are, one of the things we do, we've got our core brands, but we also do a sort of either a one-off or a seasonal beer every month of the year. So there's always something new coming out. And it's like 2022 is already completely planned. So 2021, I'm about halfway through the year, and I actually got a call from some folks in the Canadian government saying, "Hey, we've got this Australian brewery that would like to do a collab." And they're looking to do something with a Canadian brewery. So I was like, all right, we'll talk to them, because I'll talk to anybody about anything. And got on a Zoom call with them, and it was amazing. We just really hit it off. It was a lot of fun. They're in Brisbane, Australia, which my little brother actually lives in Surfer's Paradise, which is only about an hour from there. So the first thing I did was I called my brother and I said, look, you got to drive an hour up there. I said, like, bring your wife because she's driving you home, but you got to go up and try all their beer and let me know, how it is. So that's kind of how it started. And we just got talking. We said, okay, do we do a recipe swap? Do we do this? Do we do that? Like, we just, we were putting everything. And I said, the last 18, 20 months have been a shit show. Let's have some fun. Let's make a fun beer. So we got Jacob and we got their head brewers together and said, like, you guys work on Zoom and you guys have some fun and make a beer that you want to make. Don't worry about marketing and selling it. If we don't sell a drop and we have to drink it all ourselves, that's okay. Let's have some fun. Just to kind of blow off the last 18 months and like blow off some steam. So they started out really kind of technical with, okay, what can you get there? And what can you get here? And they figured out all the ingredients. They came up with a recipe, and it's actually one of my favorite IPAs that we've put out because it's different. We often have, it's still balanced, but we often have more of a balance than this. This is really more on the hop side. It's very trendy to what's going on in Australia right now for brewing. And, it's got that kind of piney hit from the old style IPAs that you would have had probably 6-7 years ago here in Ontario. And it just worked out really well. We thought the name was funny. That's why we did it.
Oh, it's phenomenal name. I love that.
And we had we've got an illustrator that we work with from time to time when we're doing different things. And we called her up and we're like, look, we are doing this fun beer, but we need a graphic for it by Monday. And this was Friday at 4:30 in the afternoon. And she said, you know what? When we told her the concept, she's like, I will work all weekend and make sure that this is right. And, it's fun. We got the moose and the kangaroo with the koala in its pocket.
Yeah.
The moose has got the Canadian tuxedo going. We did everything tongue in cheek for fun, and it turned out great.
Yeah, it hits every note for Canada, and what I guess my understanding of Australia is in the stereotype as well.
Exactly. And like it was funny, Jacob and I sat and did a Zoom call. Had a couple of beers with a couple of people at the brewery down there. And all the other calls we had done where it was like, kind of 7 or 8 o'clock at night our time. So we said, okay, we're going to do it your time. this time, so we don't have to drag you out of bed early. So him and I are sitting there having pints with these guys at 7:00 in the morning, our time. And we recorded the whole thing because we thought, okay, great. We'll record it. We'll send it to marketing. They'll be able to cut 30 seconds out of this to have a fun video. Not so much. It was like we made them sit and watch it for an hour and 7 minutes. And they're like, yeah, there's nothing we can use there. You guys got drunk at 7:00 in the morning. Just enjoy it.
Not bad.
All for progress.
Yeah, you know what? It's a hard job. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, you got
Agreed.
it. Josh, you didn't ask why are you guys called Spearhead? Where did that come from?
So that was originally, I think we still do a lot of that. It was when we launched that Hawaiian style, it was going in a whole new direction. There was not a lot of beers that had a lot of interesting ingredients or that sort of stuff in them. So we really felt like we were kind of spearheading the way into a new type of beer and a new way of thinking. And we do that, and we're kind of off the beaten path with a lot of the stuff we do. We kind of, we're like, hey, let's go this way, and whoever wants to follow us does. A good example of that would be our botanical hop water. We launched that in September 2020. There's a few breweries that have tried to come up with something similar, and it's just another addition to, the hop water is great because there's nothing in it that's bad for you. There's no sugar, there's no salt, there's no alcohol, there's nothing. It's great, just thirst quenching. You can kick them back. It's just water and bubbles. That's it. And it's infused with hops, so you get that the real kind of floral and aromatics out of the hops. I often will drink those between beers, but I'm up to 6 or 8 cans myself every day on those. I quite like the aqua, but it's just, we just do different things. We do what we feel like. So that's kind of where the Spearhead came from.
I'm really waiting for a hop water to explode. I think it's just a matter of time. Yeah.
Oh, it will. We just got into, there's a chain of stores called, from a company called McEwen's, and they're mostly in Eastern Ontario, but they go right as far as London. We're in all of those stores, and we're talking to some major chains now. So hop water will kind of be everywhere. Molson actually launched a month before we did with a product called Molson Fine, and they put a whole lot of marketing dollars behind it. But I guess the public did not like that product as much because I don't see it anywhere anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's a few in the U.S. Lagunitas makes a good one. And there's a company out of California called Hop 2.0.
Nice. Cool name. Yeah, I haven't actually got to try one yet. We've heard about them. We've talked to other brewers who make one. I think we were talking to the guys from People's Pint. That's sort of the first time I got wind of what hop water actually was. I still need to try one. Every time we go, we always just order what we need for our events and get out of there. But yeah, definitely want to give one a shot for sure.
Well, it is available online, so you can grab it anytime you like.
Literally just looking that up right now.
I think Garrett, I can see the shining light on Garrett's face from him Googling it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if you happen to be on our website, the porter, we did the raspberry chocolate porter again, and the G'day are both going to be sold out real soon. So if you want to get your hands on either of those, it's the right time to do it.
Cool.
Because they're both almost out, which is good because I need room in the warehouse for the candy cane lager in December.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean, again, like we do something fun every month. We do a new beer.
That's amazing, Josh. In terms of, we're in November now of 2021, coming sort of hopefully step by step out of the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about how you guys are faring now? How was the last 20 months for the team? Just sort of a quick little summary of how you guys have weathered the storm.
It's been an interesting couple of years. Like I can tell you that when it first hit, we weren't ready. I got no shame in admitting that. Like some people would be like, you didn't have a pandemic plan in your pocket. No, I didn't. And that's always one of those things when you're working and running an organization is like, yes, I should have all of these different types of disaster recovery plans in my pocket. But the reality of just life is there's only so many hours in the day. So you plan for as much as you can plan for and you do the best you can. I also did not have a plan in my back pocket if there were dragon attacks. I do now.
Well, now you know, Josh. Yeah.
Yes, because anything can happen. Like there was in anybody's lifetime of anybody I know, there was never a pandemic. So I didn't have a plan.
It's true.
I've got plans if the power goes out. I did not have plans if this happened. But so like overnight, our licensee channel disappeared. Like literally overnight. And also a lot of our for us, a lot of our contract brewers just canceled and halted brews because they were reliant on the licensee channel as well.
Right.
Also, a lot of the contract brewers that we work with actually have their own facilities. We just handle what they can't handle at their own facility. We do, any kind of a capacity spillover that they have. So we lost 2/3 of our business overnight, and really had to buckle down and work hard to reinvent ourselves. I think one of the online was huge, and that was huge for every brewery. We did a lot of deliveries right across the province. Luckily, we're already set up to handle that from a technological standpoint. From a logistical standpoint, getting it out to people, there was a few bumps in the road the first month or two, but we really kind of were able to streamline it quickly. And our retail shop was able to stay open, which helped. And the other big thing that I think we were able to do is we were able to keep our sales staff employed through the whole pandemic.
That's good.
A lot of folks had to lay people off, and a lot of breweries actually took their sales staff, kept them employed, but turned them into delivery people. So they'd ship a bunch of beer to their houses and then they would deliver. We kept them selling and we had them on the phones. And I think that was a big thing for us because volume of our own products out of our building actually increased by 40% through the pandemic.
Wow.
So we were able to grow that, which helped from, make up for the areas where we lost. So we came out kind of almost even, not quite, but it was still quite a struggle, but we were able to pull through. And then now, as the licensee channels have opened back up, it's been great for us. And people are doing more contract brewing, so we're actually looking at expanding and adding more tanks next year to be able to handle that volume. Because the last thing we want to do is tell our contract brewers like, oh no, you got to go find somewhere else to go. I only want to be able to tell them that when they're opening their own shop. That's how we want to try to work with our contract brewers, is to help them kind of, I think I used the word before, but like we try to be an incubator for them.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
Do you have many contract brewers who use your facility? Are you at liberty to tell us that?
We're working about 8 or 10 right now.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. I'd say that's a good amount.
That sounds like a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, like one of them, which is, I think is a great success story that does not brew with us at all anymore, is Skeleton Park Brewery. They're based out of Kingston. They had been brewing at a few shops around Ontario. When we moved into town, they were the first ones that kind of took the leap of faith to come work with us, because it was all, everything was brand new and big, nobody really knew us in Kingston. And they were able to open their own shop, and they do all their brewing there now. But we were able to help them grow to that point, and that was it was a good feeling. Like Kingston's got, we've only got 120,000 people. There's 6 or 7 bricks and mortar breweries here, so like we're punching above our weight class with the breweries that we have. And the cool thing is we all have very different styles and different ways of doing things. So every brewery you go to is a unique experience, and you get, very different products in each one.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I mean, yeah, Kingston's an interesting case study, if you can call it that, because yeah, you said 6 or 7 brick and mortars, about 120,000 people, huge student population in
Yes.
Kingston. Is that a big part of your clientele, or not so
Um,
much?
well, the students come and go. They're certainly they're great. They're great customers and great to have. But I mean, they come. One of the cool things about it is, any of the students that start drinking the different Kingston beers and our beers, they go off into the world and do their own thing, but they keep buying our beer and
Mm-hmm.
they introduce it to new people, whether they're, from whatever part of the Ontario they've come from. So that's been good, but it's not just Queens, because a lot of people think of Kingston, they think of Queens. Queens is awesome, and there's a lot of really great students from there. But there's also St. Lawrence College, which is a huge college that is a great institution, and it's actually quite close to our brewery. And then there's also RMC, Military College, and that and also military bases here. We do have quite a few military folks that have been by for a beer or two. Turns out that a lot of the military folks do enjoy beverage from time to time.
That's surprising.
Good to know.
Yes. But we've got, there's Kingston's got a lot of government institutional.
For sure.
And so we have a lot of, prison guards that come in. We have a lot of just, police, like a lot of first responders. So it's quite a mix.
Can't think of Kingston without thinking of Sir John A. Macdonald, and you can't think about Sir John A. Macdonald without thinking about alcohol.
Yes, that is true.
There you go.
Maybe along with a few other things that are not so flattering.
Not so, yeah.
Anyways, that's another episode. But
yes.
but I'm sure. So would you say though that it's an interesting consumer, the student market, because you're right, in a way it's probably advantageous to you because you get them while they're young, and then afterwards, right, like Kingston does have that reputation of being a student town. People come, and after 4 years they probably don't stay, but then you've fostered a consumer for life, potentially, if
we do our job right.
That's right, if you do your job right.
Yeah. And I mean, we also we have a lot of Queens alumni that also enjoy our beer, because one of the cool things, my business partner Richard Ward is he was one of those students that came to Kingston, but he came in 1978 and he never left. He went through the engineering program, became an engineer, worked for a local engineering firm, like they did engineering and fabrication, bought that company as he basically was the succession plan, and he built our brewery. So like Queen's engineering, really, when you think about it, like what put a lot into our brewery because of Richard's education, and it was it's quite the you've got to come out and see it sometime, because that's actually one of the very unique things about our brewery is our brew house, and all of our tanks were custom built right here in Kingston. And there's nobody else who can say that anywhere. And what we did was we took, Tom's wealth of knowledge. We took Richard's wealth of knowledge. And also Tom's got a lot of buddies that are retired from Labatt that all kind of came together. And, we really put a lot of thought into this brewery before we started building it. Our tanks will crash cool in 12 hours. The industry standard is 24. It's everything, we didn't get it certified because we don't have to in this industry, but everything was built to a pharmaceutical standard because that's what Pure Ingenuity, Richard's company, builds. They build for pharma and for dairy. So everything's built to an exacting standard. Our CIP system is second to none. Most people don't even know what that is, but it's a clean in place. So it cleans all of our tanks from one centralized location. Cleans the tanks, the brew house, the canning line, the kegging line, everything. And that's the advantage to having a system like that in place is, that you've killed off all the bugs. You know everything's clean.
Yeah.
You're
That's
not
a
going to
big
make
part of
any
brewing.
accidental sours. Yeah. Well, it's, Tom will tell everybody that will listen to him and a few people that won't. Brewing is 20% fun, 80% cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that time and time
We
again
hear that,
in
yeah.
a lot of our conversations. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Josh, we're coming up on 1 hour, believe it or not, but I do want to ask maybe a final question from me in terms of, I was actually reading an article today about, it was an American article about craft beer and craft breweries and the potential growth in the next decade or so. Maybe looking at a micro lens in terms of a medium, if I can use that adjective, city like Kingston. Do you think there's a lot more potential for growth in a place like Kingston? And maybe side question, a province like Ontario, do you think there's a lot more space for new craft brewers, whether it be
Absolutely
brick and mortar or contract brewers? Do you think there's a lot more market share to be taken up by craft beer?
Absolutely. Like, I think you're going to see a lot of growth from both sides, from the from your contract brewers and your bricks and mortar brewers. Some of them are going to come and go. Some of them are going to make good beer, some of them aren't. Some of them are going to have good marketing, some of them aren't. Like, it's going to happen that some will disappear, some will come in, and some of them are going to merge, and there'll be lots of those types of things. But there's so much room in this market to grow. You've got a lot of people that are coming off the macro beer cycle. And the reason that that's happening, in my opinion, and I have no facts to back this up, but where this comes from for me is we're seeing the first generation of drinkers who were raised by people who drink craft beer. Like, my daughters, when they become of age, will have never seen me drinking a Coors Light. They'll have seen me drinking all sorts of different types of great craft beers. And there's a whole generation growing up that way. They've, like, literally the only time my girls saw a Coors Light was somebody had come to a party and left some in my fridge. And that became the BB gun target practice.
Sounds like a fun house.
We do have some fun. So yeah, it's from my perspective, I think that's going to create a whole lot more craft beer drinkers, and it's going to drive a lot of creativity within the craft beer sector. It's going to, because people are going to want different things, want new and exciting, and we're going to have to invent it. And what that is, I can't tell you, because we're not there yet. We haven't invented it, but we'll get there. I think as a group of craft brewers, we will all, work together to just break that new ground and kind of spearhead into the future.
Spearhead into the future. I like that a lot.
I like that perspective. That's a refreshing perspective, that it's craft beer has become, it's sort of gone beyond a fad in a sense, and it's actually entrenched in like family and culture and our offspring, as it were. So yes. I like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a great place to stop. Josh Hayter, Spearhead Brewing Company, based out of wonderful Kingston, Ontario. If you haven't been, you got to go. Thank you so much, Josh, for taking the time.
Thanks, you guys. Cheers.
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 Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all our interviews and beer-related content. Remember, craft beer is here.